don't be looking out for answers. It's going to be wildly confusing.
Yeah.
My guides told me that a few decades ago. They said, you will enter a time when people cannot tell fact from fiction. And in fact, they will have a hard time determining whether something that happened while they were dreaming or awake. That's when you'll know everything has shifted. We're there now.
Yeah.
And so now we allow this incredibly divine vehicle we're incarnating into to be our tuning fork for truth, wisdom, through the body.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Ticho, and today I am very excited and honored to be joined by none other than Regina Meredith. Let me tell you about this extraordinary woman, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her trailblazing career. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because then we'll be here for too long, but she is absolutely renowned for her transformative contributions to alternative media. Regina's media career began as the first independent traveling ski reporter in the United States in California and Sacramento. And she became one of the first female sports broadcasters at NBC in New York, covering football with Bryant Gumbel. Some of you will remember that name, others were too young, but she is a seasoned show host, news anchor, network sports broadcaster, reporter, producer, and writer. Her work includes the award-winning documentary Sierra in Peril on PBS, and Regina's Vegetarian Table, which aired for 6 seasons on PBS and internationally. In 2004, Regina and her husband Scott founded Conscious Media Network. And that was one of the first sites to stream conscious videos online. And of course, it later merged with Gaia in 2012. Since then, Regina has contributed to and brought thought-provoking content to a global audience through her show Open Minds, which if you have not checked it out on Gaia, absolutely, if you have Gaia, you have to put that on your playlist and watch. And without further ado, Meredith, thank you, Regina, thank you so much for beaming in. It's an honor.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it, Fausto, for having me with you. I love the fact that we're talking far out.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Like after this amount of time in this particular field, metaphysics, alternative everything, and phenomena, I'm not shocked by much anymore. But so sometimes I feel like, well, what do I actually have to contribute? And you start finding where your kind of specialties are over the years. But I love all of it.
Yes, and I'm like, what else, what else is there to talk about? I mean, what else is there that's productive to talk about? And we can talk about the state of the world, we can till we're blue in the face, but what good is it doing?
Yeah, there's some interesting things about that. Yeah, I mean, I really try to take a meta view of all of it and take my background, my deeper studies in hermetics and all these things into consideration even while watching world events, particularly while watching world events, puts a little different framework to it all. So even that, yeah.
Yes. You've sat across kind of a who's who of alternative thought personalities from Billy Carson to David Icke, who I've had both Billy and David on my show. Greg Braden, who I would love to have on my show. One of these days I'm gonna get him. Rupert Sheldrake, And my question is, how does a pioneer of female sportscasting end up as the kind of go-to voice for the most mind-expanding conversations on the planet?
Was the question in there?
So the question was, how did you go from, this trailblazing pioneer, female sports broadcaster to, you're now like the voice and a gateway for some of the most expansive conversations happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's my dharma. Simply put, everything I did in media prior to that, when I was young, I didn't want to be. Don't know how much you know my backstory, but I did not want to be in media. It wasn't my choice, but I did it on a dare, and because of my dharma, I was hired, and so here I've done this many decades-long career now in front of the camera without ever having turned in a demo reel, a resume, or anything. It's just like, and it's because I couldn't get away from it if I wanted to, because it was my dharma. So sports and those things were convenient for the day because it was new to see a female face. And it was just a training ground. And it really wasn't until about a decade and a half, I'd say later, that I started using the media for purposes I thought were more productive. And that's when I started going into, for example, collaboration with PBS. I even did some alternative programs along the way, which was wonderful. While I was a news anchor, I had a very open news director who he was open-minded. And I think he just had a fondness for my craziness. And he let me do a Sweeps Week, Ratings Week special on psychic phenomena
No
on the
kidding.
nightly news. One show a night, and it got pretty far
Wow.
out. That is where many years ago, we're talking the mid 80s, that's where I came in contact with um, gosh, give me just a second here. Russell
Targ.
Targ,
Targ, yeah.
and and SRI. So I was able, for reasons I'll never understand, to score an interview with Russell before and after they went to Russia for their very famous
Wow.
remote viewing taping with the Soviet Academy of Sciences. So that kind of kicked it off. I think it did well. Talked about cold cases and psychics solving them in the Sacramento area. So I've been on this path a really long time,
Yeah, tell me
trying to
what you
twist
mean
media.
when you say that's my dharma. Tell everyone what you mean by that, because I think I know, but I want to make sure they're
Well, it's what I was
understanding.
born to do.
Yeah.
My soul contract was to do this exact thing. And you know how we prep ourselves.
Oh
Bruce
yeah.
Lipton's work is very influential.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We're
Love
talking about
Bruce.
epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that the soul is involved in tweaking circumstance, features, etc., while we're in utero, to be able to serve the path that we've chosen as a soul. And some of it's defensive and some of it's offensive in nature in terms of creation. If you remember Bruce's work, if a soul is going to be born into a violent family, they use the example of the skull thickening while in utero, knowing what's coming up and for protective purposes,
That's
and
right.
whatever lessons are to be gained. So for whatever reason, whatever I possess was born in utero, was developed in utero to do this exact thing, which is crazy because I'm a shy person and I never rose my hand in class. I would never have been in a school play. I didn't want people to see me. And
You're
here
like,
I am on a dare.
that's amazing. That is it's such a like a counterpart to my story, which is almost the opposite, but put me in a similar. We ended up in a similar place because
You end up where you need to be. Your
yeah,
consciousness took you here. Yes.
exactly. I saw the stage through acting. I got a BA in theater arts and then a master's
Yes.
in acting, and spent my time trying to be on stage and in front of the camera and express myself. And meanwhile, I know that was all the work that I needed to do to unlock all these chakras, energy centers, whatever you want to call them, and really become the person I was meant to be, and have conversations like this as opposed to create. I'm not knocking show business, but it has its pitfalls and traps. So,
No,
um,
this was your dharma. You
mhm,
use that as a path to this, as I use sports and news and
yeah.
everything else as a path to this.
So this is we were just talking about Russell Targ, and
Yes.
I'm going to get into a little bit about another former guest of mine, Adam Curry, and but I wanted to ask you, was there a moment when you realized that this world is nothing like what we have been taught and told?
I think the Russell Targ interview, I had been exposed to a lot prior to that.
Mm,
Psychic phenomena, I was friends with kind of the big Sacramento area psychics who read the senators, had their own TV and radio shows, because back in the 80s, this was actually well embraced. That was a kind of a golden age for the emergence of New Age and phenomena.
mhm.
And so I was ensconced in it, and I never found it perplexing. I found it rather easy to access. I wasn't I wasn't overly intrigued with any of it. It just seemed normal. However, when I did the Russell Targ interview, that was quite different. The kicker at the end of that show, here they had these high-end scientific team scientists, brilliant scientists from both the Soviet Union and America, witnessing this woman, Juna, who was doing her remote viewing. And
Mm-hmm.
so as she accurately drew the target, it was at the end of my conversation with Russell, of course, the big reveal, that he told me, she viewed this 3 hours before it was chosen,
Wow.
before the site was selected. So that made me really begin questioning time and space. That's when I started diving into quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and looking at the nature of mind on more of a quantum level. So that's been a passion of mine in general for decades.
Wow. Nice. You've spoken with some of the deepest thinkers on consciousness. Sheldrake, certainly Greg Braden, Adam Curry we have the same birthday. He's like my brother from another mother. We have a lot
Oh,
in
wonderful.
common.
I
We
haven't
found
seen
out.
Adam in years. You could catch me up on what he's doing now. But yes, I interviewed him many years ago.
Nice. So do you think consciousness is something science is meant to solve, or is it something that we're really here to remember as that it's everything in my opinion?
It is. And I think the answer is both. Yes, we're here to remember, but we don't need permission from science to do that. The way science is structured right now, because of the political nature of it, that has been for the last few hundred years, the really forward-thinking people have not been able to make quick headway into introducing it to the population via the world of science. They just can't. There's too much to fight. And so I think the real revolution now is that people are waking up at a rapid enough rate, and there are enough breakthrough scientists and physicists who've been willing to share and go outside the box in spite of what it costs them in their professional life, that it's given, I would say, humanity enough permission to know that what they're experiencing, thinking, feeling, their deja vus, their anticipation of someone calling, simple telepathy stuff, that they can now validate it for themselves. We don't need science to tell us this anymore. If someone wants to, great. We don't need them.
No, we don't. And in fact, they've been playing catch up. And
They've been
got
playing
a
catch
long
up.
way to go.
Well, yes, I totally agree. And there are some brilliant, well-meaning people among them who are fighting the system within, trying to legitimatize this. And I think the understanding now, especially with the new generations being born, the little alphas with those shiny eyes and massive amounts of knowledge, and just it's kind of awe-inspiring. They don't need a scientist to tell them what they're capable of.
Right. No, they don't. They're showing the scientists what they're capable of.
Yes.
Really, and in a very real way. So you've heard stories. I'm sure you've heard even more than I have, stories of alien contact, obviously psychic phenomena, spontaneous awakenings, from scientists to mystics, whistleblowers, experiencers. When you zoom out and look at the picture, do you believe they're all pointing to the same deeper reality?
I think they're all pointing to pixels of the same reality. What an experience with one person through ET contact might be very similar to pointing to the same thing someone who is a medium or is their own medium, reaching through to another dimension to speak to their loved ones on the other side. It's all pointing to the same non-local, beautiful reality that if you want to keep zooming out, looking at it on a macro level, in the largest sense, this is all mind, creation of mind, great minds from so deep in the cosmos and past we can't even comprehend them, to our minds and creation. And when you start looking at it on a non-physical level, which is all non-physical, it all starts pointing to the same thing. Mind, and I don't mean that in a mental sense, I mean that in a creative sense, is essentially the essence of all. And how we utilize our mind is the most all-important thing. In fact, I just did a series of lectures at Gaia that haven't come out yet on kind of the architecture of mind and how we should have been handed a user's manual as a species as to how this mind works. We don't even know how to use this exquisite tool to interface with all of these realities. We have the potential to connect with everything you mentioned.
That's right. That's right. And it's mind-boggling to me, and that, I mean, now we have very, very small pockets of people and, groups that are working with children to truly understand or begin to understand from a very young age that consciousness is everything. Is, it's the operating platform. And these kids that are learning this, they're already showing that they don't have the limitation, that if they're not taught the limitations that, kind of the majority of kids are through the education system, they have incredible abilities. I just keep seeing my friends with their kids blindfolded, calling out, and I know that it's literally like in real time, they're just making these videos, put the blindfold on, like, what am I holding now? And they'll run and get something. And it's not, but it's the ability
No, it's
that we have.
wonderful training.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
it's
I did
awesome.
that with my son when he was little. We just, which hand is the penny in? What color am I thinking of?
Mhm.
That kind of thing. These are wonderful things to do with our kids, to allow them to prove to themselves their mind can go anywhere they wish.
Yeah, that's right. So guests like Danny Sheehan,
Hmm.
David Icke, Linda Moulton Howe, they've paid a heavy price for going public, for being so outspoken. And maybe not so much Linda Moulton Howe, but certainly Danny and David have been put through the ringer for separate. I mean, for a lot of reasons. And we're seeing a little bit of that start to recede now. But you've had long and intimate conversations with them. And what's your sense of, what they fear most and what the rest of us don't yet understand?
I wouldn't use the word fear for either of them. David, I know better than Danny, but I know Danny pretty well too. David is not a fearful person.
Mm-mm.
And he's a warrior. His dharma was to do, we started out about the same time doing the same stuff. Literally, we went from sports to environment, where we started saying, wait a minute, things aren't as they seem. So I know his journey besides knowing him. And once he understood that things truly aren't as they seem, there's a program running here, he fearlessly went into it. And he had a situation in which a noted psychic that he felt comfortable with had basically prophesized that
That's right.
a man like him would come and do this. And so when that moment came, he took it seriously, took up the mantle, the sword, whatever you want to say, and he does not live in fear. Now, the unfortunate part is, yes, there is a price to pay. When you start going outside of the box and detailing the way this more false reality is structured, there are people who would rather you not do that. And he has suffered the consequence of that. And this happens on many levels. I've had to go through the same thing he's gone through. And it just is what it is. And there's no point talking about it.
Right.
No one's a victim. If
Right.
you choose to go into these waters, you're going to be targeted, and there will be attempts to try to stop you from saying what you're saying. But David doesn't even get it as a second thought. There's no point.
No, he just uses it as fuel for his incredible passion for the fire in him.
That's his dharma. He's doing what he was born to do. There's no question. There's no fear. So he goes fearlessly, continuing to do what he does.
Yes, he does. He calls it like he sees it, and he doesn't mind or care or be afraid of who he might offend, because he is speaking in many great truths that people need to at least begin to consider, I think.
Yes, and because he was humiliated, like he says, throughout his career, I've walked to the sound of distant laughter my entire career. And he was humiliated by one of the primary news talk show hosts very early on in Britain, and labeled. And he said it was the hardest part wasn't what they did to him, but it was what they did to his family. So your family's at risk as well. But the nice thing is, David's a family man. That's a family business, and they all support one another.
Yes,
so
they do.
it worked out fine for him in the end. He just had to keep standing.
Yes, it did. And I'm, God bless his streaming network, and his family is all involved, and I love coordinating with them because they're all awesome. They're really kind-hearted people, which is incredible considering the amount of attacks that they receive. But I have a question for you. One interviewer to another. I know how I would answer this, but you have so much more experience than me. So I'm wondering, was there ever a guest who told you something kind of so far beyond the edge that, I mean, besides Russell Targ, that kind of just almost instantaneously rearranged your paradigm, or at least began to unbuckle it from where it was?
Well, the beings I've met that have dealt with teleportation, for example, I have to have a certain amount of discretion
Yeah.
listening to people. Some people are actually delusional. There are people in this field that are very delusional. There are also people that are very real. So that is a matter of personal discernment to determine what I choose to kind of buy into. And so on the subject of that, that's something I find fascinating because according to my soul group, that's something that's actually coming into our reality fairly soon. It's not that far off. So teleportation, because we aren't physical anyway. So that always continues to amaze me. It's hard for us to get our mind around the fact that there's nothing here. On an atomic level, there is nothing here. Right?
No, I
So
know.
if that's the case, then we know things like teleportation, whether we use technology or not, are on the horizon now. And they've been using it and experimenting with it for many decades, more in black ops and so forth. But I find that like exciting as something that's coming up as a reality for us. The whole notion of, again, if we accept that we're non-material in nature, then we understand the one thing that is going to always rise to the surface as we become more intelligent as a species is that frequencies in all forms will be what inspires, what heals, what creates. It's all about frequencies. So it doesn't matter whether it's light, color, sound, art, all of these frequencies are the healing tools and devices of the future. So I love anything that has to do with affecting reality through non-material means.
Me too. My God, I just had. Have you ever heard of Dean Radin? I'm sure you have.
Yes, I know Dean. I've interviewed him.
Yeah,
I've been in his classes with doing experiments too.
Oh wow, very cool. I would love to check one of those out. But he's a fascinating individual. He's spent his life as a scientist, detailing what the effect that we have on physical matter, whether it be a water bottle or a person. Like if you have any doubt that, and he says flat out, as a skeptic and a scientist, he's like, I can tell you, there's no doubt that we have an effect, with our thoughts, with our mind.
Everything is mind, and mind includes emotions.
Yep.
It includes feeling, not emotions so much as feelings. Very fine difference, but an important difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned some people are delusional, but the problem with that, the challenge with that is, of course, they believe their delusions most of the time.
Yes.
Just as a person who is having a true experience. So, how do you use your personal intuition to discern between, okay, this person, this is not, or this person is really, wow, it's just, is it feeling?
I always use feeling. I'm a feeler. But also I'm an observer. I mean, this lifetime, even as a little kid, will not play with others. I'm just sitting and watching everyone. I watched everything. So I'm an observer. And I start paying attention to how their life is playing out, how much disorder is happening in their lives, for example, how much drama, how much attention they're trying to draw to themselves. More you have the factor of I'm a victim, here I'm trying to do heroic things, but everybody's against me. I definitely walk the other way when that story starts emerging.
You and me both, my friend. You and me both. And it's amazing how those two stories kind of ride the same people,
Yes, they do. And
look what
so
I'm doing, and everyone is conspiring to stop me.
Yeah.
It's
Don't listen to that story. The fact is, if you're in this industry and have been in it deeply for a while, people are trying to stop you. So just quit whining about it. Get on with your work. It doesn't need to be public.
Right. So you've heard firsthand accounts of mind control. You know about the Black Ops program. There's a long-running secret space program, which remarkably is still pretty much hidden from the public. There's, I think the majority of people have no idea what has really gone on underground and in the poles and in these bases and of course in space,
in the seas,
in our
in the
solar system, in
oceans.
our oceans, across our solar system, and truly beyond at this point, no doubt about it. So my question is, are we waking up as a species, or are we being distracted and fragmented and reprogrammed at every turn? Like,
All
where
the
do you see
above.
this going?
All the above.
Yes.
It depends on how your own mind is arranged. What do you choose to put your attention on? We know Lee Harris and I did this book that came out recently called The Future Human, where I interviewed the Z's about what we're emerging into as a species. And I've got to say, I loved their answers. And so they talked about in the beginning quite a bit the nature of consciousness itself, how it's changing, how new consciousness is now moving through the cosmos. Every sentient thing is being affected by it, is being invited to step it up. It's a higher field of consciousness, finer field, higher frequencies. And so this is nothing but, we talked about this already, this whole thing is nothing but a frequency game.
Mm-hmm.
So you can choose which frequencies you want to buy into. I am not particularly intrigued with a lot of, first of all, they're not new revelations. I've been around this field too long. I've been exposed to most, not everything, but certainly most of those stories. I know a lot of the players. I've been out in the field with Stephen Greer. I've seen stuff myself and talked to Drumbelow about what he saw in the hangars in the 60s and all of that. I mean, I feel like kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, I've heard that one before. Yes, it's interesting, but if you back it up again, extraterrestrials have always been here. They have been here from the beginning. The fact is, they didn't take over. Now, that said, there's a caveat there we could go into if you want to, but
you might have to. It's an interesting caveat.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. We probably should. And it's nothing David Icke doesn't talk about, but by and large, they didn't externally, outwardly take over this planet. It was left to this species of humans to continue living our lives. Doesn't mean we haven't been manipulated and aren't being manipulated. We are. So if we allow these finer feelings and what we wish to associate with, for example, the notion of kindness, compassion, love, affection, beauty. Beauty is not talked about enough. Beauty in all forms. It can be just the look of your little doggy companion, look in your eye, when they look in your eyes, to start really choosing to indulge in everything we find uplifting and beautiful is the only antidote we have right now.
Yeah.
Because that's more in alignment with the frequencies that are prevailing and moving through our asking for. And as the Z's said, our conscious mind, which is the lowest part of our functioning mind, this the frontal lobes here, they're processing units, and we've let them take over and run the show. Well, those are completely programmed by subconscious and things we're not aware of and can't see, other frequencies. So we can't let the brain be our determining factor, trying to I'm going to suss this out and figure this out. And I know where these guys and these guys. That's not where it is anymore. Right. Now it's getting much simpler. Those are intriguing stories. Yes, we've always had ETs here. Most of them were good. Most of them were actually trying to help humanity sort through things in a rather chaotic beginning. And there are those who came who are more marauders and exploited by nature. We know of those who remain and have influence, but so do the positive others, interdimensionals, third dimensional ETs. Those are the ones you can actually see. The rest are interdimensional. For the most part, we don't see them unless you have inner vision and you can see them as well. Right. So if we understand this is our planet, it's the planet of a developing species called humankind, which is absolutely fascinating throughout the universe. And the Z's are very clear on this. This is something my soul group told me decades ago. They said, you have no idea what the human species represents on a cosmic level.
Wow.
It's an incredibly interesting development with very high potential.
Yes.
So you have to decide what are you going to let influence you? How are you going to use your emotions and energy? Lower your frequencies, you're going to get a different result.
Raise them and you'll get a different result as well.
Exactly.
This is an easy experiment for anyone who doubts what we're saying to do. You can immediately change your day, change the moment, change your mood, change your personality.
Yes.
But, tell everyone who may be listening and who probably may not know the reference to Z's, who you refer to.
Okay. So Lee Harris is a channel that channels a group called the Z's. I know him well. I'm also friends with Sheila Gillette in the Theo group, and Belinda and the 12 Archangels, Belinda Womack. So there are different people I have become friends with over the years, and I also interview on Gaia and on my own site as well on occasion. And his group is called the Z's, and each of these soul groups comes with their own intention. When they work through a person, there are specific kind of ranges of messages they bring through. The Z's know me pretty well. We've been around each other quite a bit, and they know I'm going to push it. So for quite a long time, for years, they wouldn't go where I wanted them to go because it wasn't time yet. I'm like, hey, I want to know. Well, maybe it's not time for everybody that's watching this to know. Who knows? They're examining that. So this particular book, where we're talking about the future, really opens up a lot of permission. So that's why I chose that subject. And also because there was so much despair among people that our species is going to collapse, become irrelevant to AI, or simply vanish because of our own poor behavior and mismanagement of the planet. And none of those things are true. And so I thought, I can't just say that. Who's going to listen to me? So why don't Lee and Lee wanted to do a book together. I said, well, let's talk to the Z's about this stuff. That's what it's about.
So are the Z's from the Zeta Reticuli?
No, I don't think so.
No, they just refer to themselves
as the Z's. Yeah, there was Zechariah. It was a number of entities that had a name starting with the Z. So they just reduced it to the Z's.
See, oftentimes these entities are in a collective. They're no longer in individualized physical form the way we are. Because they've already experienced that and they've kind of moved on from it. And so, but when communicating with humans, oftentimes because we have, a very kind of specific way we identify and communicate, namely using names, they end up, letting us kind of give them an adopted name.
The Z's,
like Abraham Hicks is a perfect example. Abraham is the name of the collective, not a single entity, but people don't realize that.
Esther Hicks and the Abraham group. And this is the Z group because their names in that collective group of guiding souls, many started with a Z. And so with my own group, for example, my own soul tribe I'm from, there's no name. The being does not answer to a name. And I've asked over the years, but where are you located? And I remember many years ago, they said, I'm so far away that you don't have the ability to comprehend just yet. And so close, I'm right there with you and in you. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Okay. As long as the information proves out and bears out to be true and positive over time, then I'll pay attention. And it has. They've saved my life so many times. I mean, I'm very grateful to my soul group.
That's amazing. So how did you begin the practice to make contact with your soul group? Because, we talk about higher selves and I often talk about how one of the things that when I learned meditation, and then began to train as a channel, because I did spend time working with some of my favorite channels out there who were willing to teach me. I first had to establish contact with what you would call my higher self, what people would refer to as that, because that is kind of, as I understand it, and in my experience, that's the go-between between the rest of the cosmos, your soul family. But I'm wondering, how did you establish means of contact with your soul family?
Like everything else, I'm not prone toward ritual or habit. In fact, I'm not very habit forming.
Wow.
I've tried to form various habits. I even tried to become a drinker at one point. I thought I should have a glass of wine every night. That would be a good thing. Everybody else's, the bottle had one glass out of it and then went bad. And I thought, oh my God, I forgot to drink. So let's just say I am not habitual.
Yeah.
So having to do anything as a practice to get to another point doesn't work for me. But situations arise and I very much respond to the moment. I tend to live more in the moment. And so, I mean, I can tell you one day in particular where things consciously popped through is because I had not planned on it. I was running around, I was a runner at the time, and I was running around the park, and I wanted to take a shortcut home, and I felt something pushing me and wouldn't let me turn to take the shortcut home. And I thought, whoa, stop it, and I couldn't make my body turn the corner to the right. I was being pushed forward, and I thought, so I went ahead and ran and got home, and then I got this like an urge of feeling, go get your Ouija board out. Now, who would think that? Because my friend and I would play with the Ouija board and it would basically fly off of the board. The plankette moved so fast, it would just go. And we just thought it was great laughs. There was nothing, we never encountered anything dangerous in it, but it can. You have to be careful.
Yes.
It didn't happen that way for me. So I thought, a Ouija board, okay. And so I went and got the Ouija board out, put my fingers on the plankette, and it started moving, and it said, go get a pencil and paper. I thought, okay. So I got a pencil and paper, and I thought, whatever's going on here, it's not going to be my design.
Right.
So I went like this and just put my head in my chin and closed my eyes and looked the other way, but allowed my hand, my dominant hand, to hold the pencil over the paper and just see what happened. And when I looked at it, I was shocked. Everything was geometrically perfect. Every circle went over itself, every loop, every straight line. It was perfect. And I thought, okay, I didn't do that. I didn't have my eyes open. I couldn't do that. Then it said, go to your typewriter. It's before I had a keyboard. So everything's just telling me to go to something simpler. And so I thought, okay. So I went to the typewriter. I thought, I'm not participating. Closed my eyes. Just let my hands be dead over the keyboard. And then my hands started lifting up and typing in a very direct manner, not the way I type.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. And so I thought, okay, just wait and see what's going on here. And so after that, I knew if I wanted to get messages, I might be able to show up and maybe something would happen. And so that started happening. So I was doing auto writing.
Nice.
And at that time, this was again in that explosion of phenomena in the 1980s. So I remember the Sacramento Bee found out from someone. I was on air. So I put myself on the line on this one.
Yeah.
That I did automatic writing. And I remember they featured me in a 2-page spread in the Sunday paper on me and auto writing. So of course I referred to Ruth Montgomery and, go read the books and you'll see what it's all about.
Right.
But that became the beginning. And then after that, I just kind of got rid of the keyboard and I started feeling this funny little, Saturday Night Live had a couple characters from way back, Todd and his girlfriend, who was Gilda Radner. And he would do this noogie on top of her head, rub his little fingers like that, noogie, noogie. And that was their sign of affection. And a being started doing that with me. And it made me laugh. And I thought, someone just noogied me. And so I listened. And I was able to get words. I could hear words. And so I knew whenever I felt the noogie, it was time to go. Now it's completely different. If I want to know something, I close my eyes and say, if it's for me to see, show me. If it's not, keep the screen black. And I go with it. And I don't analyze it at all, because analyzing it will kill it, because the conscious mind is so numb compared to the rest of the greater mind and what's being shared. So I do it that way now.
That's a wonderful,
it's simple and direct
practice, that our listeners can adopt and try out if they want.
Everyone does it in their own way. Everyone has their own path to it. You just have to pay attention and say yes and try it and see. And if you get validation, the whole validation is important, because it builds our confidence to trust in these systems. So you have to try and not be impatient. I allowed lots of time to pass before I got to the point where I could just sit down and say, show me. And every now and then, if it's really important, they'll pull me over. I'll just start going seemingly unconscious, and I think, oh, I might be driving, and they'll
Yeah.
want to get my attention, and I pull over and just go with the flow and see what it is they want to share with me.
Wow.
Doesn't happen that often. It has to be pretty urgent.
Yeah, and you mentioned that that's saved your life a few times, which is
On a number of,
fascinating.
in different ways. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, that's awesome. And so, speaking of, being pulled over, have you ever been like warned, either in a subtle way or maybe directly, not to kind of talk about certain topics, especially when it
Yes.
comes to ETs?
Oh,
Obviously
yes.
government programs. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I remember an event occurred that made it onto the news. I won't get into it because they got on my case about it. And I saw what was going on. I viewed it and I went ahead and wrote about it.
Wow.
And my soul group really got on me. They said, just because you can see something doesn't mean you share everything you see.
Yeah.
And then I've also was warned off. I don't need to get into the details, but you can imagine looking at today's news headlines. 20 years ago, I was in both Israel and Palestine, and I thought I'm going to do a little documentary on this when I get back. And we had all kinds of film, and I'd interviewed Israelis and Palestinians, and it was actually a very positive little film I wanted to do about how governments separate people. The people don't separate themselves, and I was warned off of that. They said, this isn't your dharma this lifetime. Stay out of it. It won't be resolved in your lifetime. You need to continue on your path doing what you do. So I was seriously warned off on that.
Wow. And that doesn't surprise me at all. I'm very outspoken about what's happening.
Yes.
People think that makes me political in some way because they're confused. But, I do have a soft spot for children and protecting
Absolutely.
them.
I do too. It's the thing that probably makes me on a physical domain level the angriest. Yes. And I do speak, but I tend not to speak on my site, certainly not through Gaia.
Yeah.
No, because it will denigrate my possibilities for doing what I do and what else I have to say. It's dangerous to do it, is the point. And so good for you for feeling free to speak up.
Yeah.
They warned me off so long ago. I know that I just speak up privately.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't surprise me that is the subject that you got the biggest warning on, because it's such a hotbed. It's dangerous. But so with so much disinformation and agenda-driven noise out there, right? How can people know if, because now, I follow what's going on. I had Danny Sheehan on my podcast, and right after they killed that bill that would have really given the disclosure movement some teeth, and
we don't need it. I mean, Danny, I love Danny, and he's fighting like crazy to see that this is publicly acknowledged. The fact is, we already know it.
Yeah. Well, we do.
We do. And millions and millions of people already know it.
Certainly.
So, I mean, I so applaud what he's doing, but I understand he's going to constantly be thwarted as well.
Oh, yeah. He's a national treasure. I love him.
Oh, I love Danny. Yep. I met him at Disclosure in Washington, D.C. in 2001.
Oh, wow. At the press conference.
I was there.
Wow, that's amazing. Such an iconic and now legendary, the first kind of press conference of its time.
That was Disclosure, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Everyone else has come along and tried to do others and, kind of continue on. But the fact is, what Stephen Greer did was Herculean in nature.
Agreed.
That he got these people together, and I was there close up. I was with his group, and I saw what happened behind the scenes. Some of these generals, elderly admirals who broke their national security oaths after 50, 60 years were in tears because they didn't know what was going to happen to them. They didn't know if they were going to be stripped of everything, their pension taken away. They were heroes that day. That was the Disclosure event.
Yes.
So people can listen to that. Go find it on YouTube.
Yep.
You don't need to go any further. It's been done already.
Yep, it's been done. And if you want to watch the sequel, watch the one from 2023.
Yeah.
That Dr. Greer did. If you
yes.
If you want an updated, but you're right. That 2001, I don't know what more you need,
Yeah.
But of course there are people who, and this is by design, of course, the people who aren't going to believe anything, no matter what is said at this point, because they've been so, worked
Brainwashed.
over, and brainwashed that if the government says anything, they're just, at this point, they're going to be like, well, they're lying. They're like, now they're lying. I wonder why. Because, before they said clearly there was no, and some of us know damn well there has been and they've always known. And now they're saying, oh, there is. Well, what's the catch? And it's a shame because, I believe that most skeptics deep down, they want to believe, but
There's a term for that. I read once that a skeptic is a broken-hearted dreamer.
Yes, I love that.
And I think that's
so true.
There was some hurt along the way where they may have given their credulity to something and then it turned out not to be true and they felt they were made a fool of and they were never going to believe again. And then there are those people who make their money off of being deniers of everything at a high official level.
Those are different people.
Disinformation artists, lots of them.
Skeptics are broken-hearted dreamers.
Yeah.
I often use that word. I have a good friend who's also, in all probability, editing this podcast as we speak. Or, well, will be as we speak. Who's a skeptic, but I always say, he's got a big heart. So some of these things are really hard for him to try to believe that they could be possible. Some of the conspiracies that I talk about, all that stuff. But it's a great saying you said.
Yeah, and in the end, if you have to choose whether you're going to have an expansive heart that can tap into higher truths or have a lot of data in your head about government programs with ETs, I choose the heart.
Yeah. You can have
It's going to take you further.
I'm a big believer in both. I mean, I like to live my life from that. I mean, I like to absorb knowledge.
Me too.
But also live from my heart.
Exactly.
So.
I feel the same. And so if someone like your friend is having to choose, they just aren't ready to go there on the data level, no problemo, as long as your heart's alive and open.
Very true. Very true. Dr. Greer gets a bad name. I've met him and hung out with him several times. I've gone on CE5 contact events with him, and I mean, the dude is as sincere as they come. He may not always be perfectly politically correct when he talks about other people in the same area, but he has his reasons, and he's adamant about the most important thing, and that is trying to get people to understand that there is no threat. They're gonna, we know they're gonna say, or they're gonna try to say, that there is a threat from outer space. And so him saying in a blanket statement that there is no threat, I don't believe is false, because I don't believe that any true threat to this race would be allowed to manifest, because there's so many other beings and civilizations who are guarding this experiment of humanity on this little planet in the backwoods of the Milky Way. I mean, I don't know. So I don't understand why so many people, I mean, I do, but I don't, kind of come down on Dr. Greer.
Well, I've been in your situation. I was out in the field with him also for a couple weeks, different occasions. And part of the remote viewing happened. I was part of that. And the sincerity with which he's doing this is absolute.
Yes.
I think that there are some issues that have come up because, remember, before 2001, before disclosure, over those 10 years he was assembling all of this, his team was hit pretty badly. Mm-hmm. And so you got to be aware that he became fearful for a reason.
Yeah.
And I get that. But everything has to be, if you're at a position where you have that much authority on a subject, I think it's important to be very nuanced when you make declarative statements.
Yeah.
This is our planet. Many species have been here. Many are coming and have been here all along to help humanity. That is all accurate. And clearly no one is openly taken over, not that we can see at this point in history. However, it doesn't mean that you don't have ill-intentioned forces that have been able, just like what David Icke talks about, that have made it through. And I will say this, and for good or bad, I've interviewed many people that refer to those forces keeping things clamped down, not allowing humans to really rise past, continuing to encourage distraction and greed and separation. All you have to do is open the news apps and you can see that hand is at play. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's not just human. In fact, the Z's said, your race is not a warring race. That was inculcated by others who have come here and remain. And they have been attempting to control and manipulate for a very long time. Doesn't mean they're successful with everyone, but they operate at very high levels and they appeal to people who have issues of greed and corruption and want a lot of power without earning it.
Oh, yeah.
They go into collaboration with them. So when Stephen says that, he puts himself in a vulnerable position. You have to acknowledge the whole thing, the ones he's dealing with. And I remember many years ago watching him at an event in Laughlin, I think it was the UFO Congress that year. I could see his main being he speaks about around him and behind him. I said, she's with you. She was with you when you were speaking. And he started laughing. He said, I know she was. Yes, his experience is with a group of souls, which I would guess he's part of. Okay, I'm sure he's from that group, that are here for good. And it's right to speak about it. But to deny that any other influences here can get you in hot water.
Yeah. And I think that what he's trying to head off, quite simply, is, the nefarious parts, the deep state, whatever you want to call
absolutely.
Their plan to use the technology they've, been reverse engineering for decades to create another false flag. And so that's what I think he's trying to. I think it's undeniable, that and it should be clear to everyone. Well, I guess religion throws a monkey wrench in a lot of things like this, but the fact that there are two types of influences being broadcast, to humans at this time. One of them is positive and in service to others, as well as self-love, and the other one is strictly service to self in the old-fashioned selfish way, like step on someone's face to get to where you're going, and the other one says, no, I'm gonna take care of myself, and I'm gonna take care of you as well.
So when you open your news app in the morning, who do you think's got the primary voice right now? And so, but that doesn't mean that's where we are. Most people are not where those headlines are. We don't live there. We're disgusted by them. We hate seeing what's playing out in the world. We're seeing a very mean world taking shape right now that's not reflective of we human beings. It's not reflective of us. And I believe it is honestly, because the consciousness is changing. The new little shiny people being born aren't going to buy this stuff. And even generations above them aren't buying it. I'm a boomer. I don't buy it.
God bless you.
Yeah, thank you. And so, my feeling on it is that we are already transcending above their capability of affecting us on any significant way, but they are going to do a last-ditch effort, which will make it seem as though the majority of the population is in despair. That's true. They are. They're going to try it, but that they can't survive within this consciousness. And the Z's talked about what happens, how much more quickly action reaction karma is happening now, and that the people trying to perpetuate these things are not going to have a good go of it.
Right. Well, that's great news.
Yes.
I talk about this all the time too. It's amazing to hear you say that, Regina. Like this notion of people's idea of humanity has been so corrupted by these powers we're referring to. I mean, and in a very real way, they have orchestrated the greatest atrocities, which has shaped our beliefs about our nature.
Yes.
And this is the biggest tragedy, in my opinion, because then, we're raised and we look at, my God, what we've done in the last 100 years, and we think, God, this human race is, then we start to believe we are a virus, we are a cancer, and we're not. We're none of those things. And all these atrocities would have never happened if not for these few, but very powerful families and people who are
the people that run those families.
That's right. I mean,
yes,
and so
you're absolutely right. And I'll say one thing, and then if you don't mind, I'll get into John Warner IV. I don't know if you've
Sure.
interviewed him.
No, not yet, but
Okay.
I'd love to.
So when people say, oh, we're just a hideous species, look at the horrible things we do, I say, well, if you're around 100 years ago, you might go to a lynching on Saturday morning for
True.
entertainment. We don't do that anymore. It would only be the most callous, low consciousness person that would go to watch someone else suffer and be killed. We rose above that. We're not at that level anymore. That would be common. That was just common around the world. So we've already risen above that level of cruelty. We're better than we've ever been.
Yes.
And I would argue we're even more discerning. We're asking questions, new questions for the first time that we haven't asked in probably since the Great Deluge, since the fall of Atlantis. We're now starting to ask questions we haven't asked since that culture existed. We're waking up. So that's beautiful. But when I interviewed John Warner IV, his father was Senator John Warner, who
That's
I
right.
think he was a multiple-term senator from Virginia, very elegant man. He was former Secretary of Defense, married to Elizabeth Taylor. And John was talking about his father giving him access. So when John was little, his dad, young, tweener, he would take him to the Pentagon and he would do his homework there. And he would listen in on conversations, and his dad would take him on some significant field trips with power players.
Wow.
And young John was appalled at what he was hearing and saw. We're talking about extreme power elite.
Yeah.
And at the end of one trip in particular to Wyoming, he asked his father, those are the people that run the show? And he said, son, I want you to see how this whole game works.
Yeah.
And so he would let him in on that. And so he told him also, while you're here, now this is all coming from John. So we're going to take it at face value.
Right.
John said his dad allowed him to ask anything he wanted of anyone at the Pentagon. He would just let him say, hey, sir, can I ask you about this or that? Because he's a young kid, innocent. And he asked an admiral, an elderly man, sir, are ETs real? And he chuckled and he said, look through these hallways. He said, ET runs the show.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, I look out my window. I look at this conversation with you and your lovely countenance. I look out my window. I have the most beautiful, sustainable kind of life going on in my own immediate surroundings, lovely family and friends, one tragedy within the family playing out along this line. But other than that, if I didn't open the headlines, I would say, what a beautiful life.
Yes.
What an abundant life. There are chickens nearby for eggs. There are peaches on the trees. What a beautiful planet, an abundant planet, and beautiful life. And then you open the headlines and say, oh my God, what a horrible time we're in. So this disconnect, that's where people have to use their discernment. In your own life, what are you buying into and spending your energy with? That will determine the quality of your own frequencies and the ability to continue on with the more beautiful aspects of Earth life if you want it.
Yeah.
So many people say, when I'm done with this incarnation, I'm not coming back. And I remember asking my soul group about that at one point. They said, where do you think you're going?
Right.
And they said, there are many other options. No one has to incarnate on Earth.
That's right.
Earth, all incarnations are a choice by every soul.
Always a choice.
If you're here, you chose it. And if you decide you don't want to be here, you can go anywhere where there is a vibrational match. If you can vibrationally slip in, you can incarnate in other places. So what kind of frequency do you want to leave this Earth life with?
Yep. That's
the highest possible.
Right. So question for you before we kind of start to wrap things up a little bit. But so for people who feel like, okay, the veil has been lifted, but now they feel more confused and overwhelmed than ever, maybe. What's the one thing that you would advise them to do to kind of stay grounded and empowered and come into a little more clarity and coherence?
Okay. Oh, that's an easy one. And I really got this from the Z's, and you've heard it from many other people, I think, in other podcast interviews. But when the Z's explained how it works, it actually hit home for me. And that is, your mind is not going to be able to discern. with the introduction of AI, and the forces that are out there that choose to misinform, it's going to become extraordinarily confusing for the mind. So I have been having people do this tiny little experiment. The Z's said, the mental realm that you've been in for thousands of years, that part is now diminishing in favor of heart intelligence.
Yes.
And so if you start taking the things that confound you and you start dropping it into the heart, and I have people do this tiny experiment. Something's bugging you, annoying you, confounding you. So it's your mind is just not settled with it and you're irritated or whatever. And you take a breath and with intention, almost turn it into, you can do it the way you wish, but like a thought bubble, that thing into a thought bubble. And you take that thing and you drop it down into the heart and you're breathing the entire time. Just breathe through it. The intention is you're dropping it into the crystalline intelligence of the heart. Very different than the frontal cortex and conscious mind. And then you see how it responds and what the answer is, and it's amazing. All of the filters, the heart doesn't have that kind of fear.
No.
The conscious mind filter is not over the heart, it's over the conscious mind. So if we start
there's no hemispheres in the heart.
Yes, you start looking into the body's intelligence, the organ's intelligence, dominantly heart intelligence. The thing that annoyed you comes back as some simple dynamic you shouldn't waste your energy over.
Yes.
So I'd say now we have to, and they were clear in saying, the Z's said, the thing that will separate and define you, apart from AI, which will become very sophisticated and human-like, but it will not be human. The defining factor will be the integration of your intelligence into the heart and start listening. Higher mind and heart are in companionship with each other. So higher mind is going to start answering, not so much through here, but through here. So if we can start having a relationship with our body, they were saying, don't be looking out for answers. It's going to be wildly confusing.
Yeah.
My guides told me that a few decades ago. They said, you will enter a time when people cannot tell fact from fiction. And in fact, they will have a hard time determining whether something that happened while they were dreaming or awake. That's when you'll know everything has shifted.
Wow.
We're there now.
Yeah.
And so now we allow this incredibly divine vehicle we're incarnating into to be our tuning fork for truth, wisdom through the body.
I can't tell you how much I love that. I try to live by that. I try to embody that, which is not always as easy as it may sound. If it does sound easy, but
it's not always easy because there's fear.
There's a lot of fear.
You have to calm it all down and say, okay, let me get beyond fear and drop this into the heart.
Yeah.
And then things start changing.
But what a beautiful practice you just shared with everyone. Regina, tell everyone where they can find you. If for some people who I don't know, some of my listeners, if you're still holding out, I mean, I don't get a cut from Gaia, but Gaia is like essentially all I watch. And Regina has
got a lot of programs there. I've been with them from the beginning.
Yeah. So tell everyone where they can find you and follow you and support you.
Gaia.com, which is a larger network, thousands of documentaries and shows and such. My show is called Open Minds, and you can kind of cruise around and find whatever you resonate with, but my show is called Open Minds. And then my own site, reginameredith.com, is much more modest, but every now and then when something new comes across, I'll do an interview. But more now I'm doing commentary and putting these pieces together for people just because it's more efficient than trying to draw a story out of this person and this person.
Right.
Easier just to take the knowledge, put it in a little half-hour capsule and share it. So that's more what I'm focusing on right now. And that's reginameredith.com.
That's right. And she's also on Instagram. I follow her on Instagram. And she has a Patreon page, YouTube channel.
Yeah, I always forget to say all that.
That's all right. I got you.
Thank you.
Speaking of YouTube, if you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe to both me and Regina.
Wonderful.
I appreciate your time so much.
Thank you, Fausto. It's been wonderful being with you.
Yeah, I can see why we had to connect, why we did connect. I love the synchronicities. And
well, let's do it again sometime.
We should.
I really enjoyed it.
There's a lot more to talk about. We will do
Yeah.
it again, and I'll be in
Okay.
touch when this is going to come out. Thank you, everyone who's listening. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this podcast. Comments and reviews are what we thrive on, so please don't forget to do that. And thank you guys for listening. Love you. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you.
Take care.